You guys know I'm a sucker for a good tube light, and this is the MT1 from Soonwell, the magic tube. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone the style of my reviews. I like to be as honest and fair and thorough as possible, and I am here for all of my fellow indie filmmakers out there, and not the companies. As a working DP and gaffer right here in Los Angeles, I do try my best to use these tools in a real-world working environment before giving my 2 cents to the entire internet. So let's start with the pros, the things that I find most impressive about this little MT1, aka the magic tube. By the way, I am not giving it that nickname. Soonwell literally has it etched on the back here. They're calling it the magic tube. The first thing that I found most impressive was the amazing build quality. This thing is super heavy duty. It just feels durable, it feels like a really nice light, and that is because it is made out of aviation materials. There is no plastic on this thing other than the very ends here. It is all nice metal, and yet still very lightweight. It's also entirely magnetic, so unlike other little 1-foot tubes where the ends are the only parts that are magnetic, this thing, the entire backside is magnetized. And it has a very high waterproof rating of IP68. And what that means is that this thing is virtually weatherproof. It can withstand dust, dirt, sand, and it can be submerged up to at least 1.5 meters underwater. Now, Soonwell claims it can go as far as 16 feet deep, but with that IP68 rating, it does mean that it can stay submerged for at least 30 minutes long with 0 damage. So I was gaffing on a job up in the hills, and they just happened to have a pool out back, so I turned the Soonwell MT1 on and dropped it in the pool, and it turned out completely fine. Also, the size of this MT1 is slightly larger than other competitive RGB tubes in its price range. For instance, the Nanlite Pavo 6C Mark IIs are only 10 inches long, the new Godox TL30s are 12 inches long, whereas this Soonwell MT1 Magic Tube is coming in at 14 inches long. So you are going to get slightly more luminance out of this MT1, and that's just because it has a little more real estate. Now, let's get into the things that are really sweet about this Magic Tube. First thing is, as you'll notice when it's turned on, that it has built-in diffusion. Now, most other budget-friendly tubes, you will see the individual LEDs inside, whereas with this Soonwell, that is not the case. This bad boy is one solid tube of light, and that is a big benefit because, well, as you can clearly see here, it just simply photographs better. And because right now these little RGB tubes are so popular, everybody's wanting to throw them in the shot, and having one that is actually looking like a solid tube of light is just always going to look way better on camera. Not to mention, when off camera, it is providing a softer, broader source of light, and also you don't get all those little tiny shadows from each little individual LED bead. Which leads me to the coolest thing about this little tube. It is truly RGBW. That means it has an additional white LED chip inside that helps it to create a pure white tone. In other words, a much brighter and whiter light. Along with that, the RGBW capabilities allows it to have a far broader CCT range. This little magic tube goes from 1600 Kelvin all the way up to 20,000 Kelvin. On top of all of that, it has 20 special FX modes that are all customizable, and of course, the tube can be controlled via an app. Lastly, some tubes don't always revert back to the original mode that you had it on before you turn it off. In other words, let's say you set this thing to party mode, you turn it off to save power, and then when you go to turn it back on, it's just right back to normal CCT mode. The Soonwell MT1 has 4 memory modes, allowing you to store up to 4 different settings, which is pretty cool. I haven't quite figured out how to truly work those memory modes, but it is on there if you have the time to figure it out. All in all, it's a pretty awesome tube, and it's making me look really hard at the larger tubes that Soonwell offers. I'm talking about the Senseis. And the main reason why I much prefer a larger tube is because the battery life on these little tiny tubes is not great. Now, because the Soonwell is a tad larger than all of its competitors, it does get a slightly better battery life. So rather than getting just an hour, you get more around an hour and a half at full brightness, maybe an hour 45 if you're lucky. Now, the upside is it can be charged via the USB-C port with any portable USB power bank, and the upside is it does remain on while charging. However, the one thing that I am concerned about with this tube is the little plug for the USB-C charging port. First of all, it's quite difficult to pop it off, and when you do pop it off, as you'll see here, it's connected by a very thin piece of plastic, which makes me question its longevity because you will have to pop that thing on and off every time you have to charge. So my concern is that once this little plug breaks off, because with someone like me, that inevitably will happen, and then I think that would render this tube pretty much no longer IP68 waterproof because the USB-C port would be totally exposed to all the elements of the world. Now let's talk about that charge time because this is where I have some discrepancies. Now, Soonwell claims over on their website that it only takes 4 hours to charge. However, that 4-hour charge time has not been my experience. Now, I have drained this tube down to 0% battery life on multiple occasions, which is something very simple to do because, again, the battery life is not great. But when you do drain it down to 0%, completely dead, it takes way longer to charge than the claimed 4 hours. Now, I don't know the exact amount of time, but what I can tell you is that I left this Soonwell MT1 charging overnight along with all of my other tubes. And the next morning, my 2-footers and even my 4-footers were completely charged. Meanwhile, this little MT1 was still charging. So it is possible that Soonwell sent me a faulty tube. I don't know. All I'm saying is that the charge time is really, really long, which isn't really ideal when the actual runtime is only somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. Another very small downside is that the controls are on the backside where the magnets are. So once you mount this thing somewhere, you're pretty much forced to control it only via the app. And that is a little bit of a bummer because, as we all know, apps can be a little finicky. Okay, so now I have my meters here. Let's do a shootout between the Soonwell MT1 versus the new Godox TL30s and see which little tube light is not only the brightest, but also the cleanest. Let's go full brightness on the MT1. We're going full brightness. There's 100% at 5600 Kelvin. Okay, now at the 3-foot distance, we're getting an f4, 260 lux. Now, if you're from a different region of the world, we can change that to foot candles for you, or 25 foot candles. Let's get this bad boy to 5600. Okay, here we go. So versus 25 foot candles, the Godox is only 20 foot candles. So it is 5 foot candles less than the Soonwell MT1. I'm gonna assume that's because of the extra 2 inches that you're getting out of the MT1. Okay, so now I have my Sekonic Spectromaster. Yes, it's been a very busy past couple of months and I pulled the trigger on my own Sekonic 800 color meter. If you guys follow the channel, you know I have a pretty strong red-green colorblind. So for someone like me, especially because I've been doing a lot of gaffer jobs lately, the Spectromaster does come in handy for those reasons. However, I did get an open box deal on it. Okay, what we wanna do here is see which one has the better CRI reading. And let's get a reading on the Godox. And the Godox is slightly better. It's coming in at 96.7. Wow. All channels are above 90. So I'm gonna store this one here too so we can store that. Okay, so we're gonna take a reading on the Soonwell and it is giving us a 95.4. Now, 2 of the channels are under 90, and that's really not ideal. You'll see here, I'm going to save this to memory so we can look at this. Okay, so the Soonwell was a memory too. So our R9 channel, which is the red channel, is coming in at 86.2, and our R11 channel, which is, I believe that's a green channel, coming in at 86.8. So it's really not ideal to have any of the numbers coming in under 90 on that. So the Soonwell is not quite as clean as the little Godox tube. Okay, yeah, so even though both of them are very clean lights, they're both very close to the true 5600 that it says on the back. Neither of them have any wicked green magenta shift, but also what makes it very nice is that both of these tubes have the option to dial in the green magenta shift. However, the Godox is slightly cleaner, having those cleaner R9 and R11 channels. So at the time of this filming, you can pick this little Soonwell Magic Tube up for only 129 bucks on both B&H and Amazon. Links are down below. Over on the Jpdogtimes Patreon this week, we are breaking down an awesome little psychological horror film that I was the DP on, and we did a cool time transition in camera all through a lighting technique. So if you yourself are into behind the scenes, check out the Patreon where I provide a full backstage virtual journey as well as cinematography breakdowns. Be sure to check it out. With that being said, I want to give a shout out to one of our members of the producers tier, Mike S. Thank you so much for the support, along with all of my loyal Jpdogtimes Patreon supporters. These are the names you see on the screen. They are the reason this channel is happening and continues to go on. Thank all of them for their continued support. Check out the Jpdogtimes Patreon. Links are down below. As always, thank you for watching. If you liked today's video, be sure to share it with your friends, your dog, your coworkers. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button. And for now, that is a wrap. All right. They're calling it the Magic Tube. That is not me, just because I already know the comments that are gonna come in after that one. First one is, take notice while I turn it on, because you will see instantly that it has built-in diffusion. Whoa, all right, I think we got it. Get a nice shot of all my rags in here.
Damn!
Ooh, doggy.
Damn!
What do we got? We got some rags up here, orthodox. Oh, we got the silent quarter grade. No, we want magic cloth. Bam. Where's the magic cloth? Bam. Ooh, there she is. Bam. Yeah, buddy.